back to a game week here with our weekly visit with our guy Adam Terry. And man, it still kind of feels weird to have week 3 of the season off. Did it not last week? How do you come out of this? I guess if you're the Orange, Adam, where you were cooking pretty good, and now you've had a week to sit around.
Well, I think it allows you to go back to dialing in the things that you weren't successful with in the first 2 games. I mean, it's a little bit of a blessing in disguise, especially for special teams. You look at what their operation has been over the last 2 or these past 3 weeks, but the 2 that we actually got to see a product out on the field, and it wasn't great, but it's a great opportunity to go back, dial people in, and the difficulty of this is with so many personnel groupings and guys running in and off the field, it does muddy the waters a little bit of who's on what, when is he on what, who needed a rep off on defense or on offense, and that's really where you can draw everybody back in and make sure everybody's on the same page. Otherwise, I think it's the opportunity to build for the offense and for the defense. But the special teams was where they really needed to, focus in and be a little bit more specific on the correcting and the personnel that was running in and out of the field.
And, no game this last weekend, so a little extra time to browse around and check out other games and the like. Do you have any idea what's going on with this league? I got nothing. I got no idea what's going on. Florida State stinks. Who knows what's going on? Do you have any sense of the ACC about 3 weeks in?
I just know it's a tremendous path for Syracuse right now. At the beginning of the season, you sit down and you look at it and you're like, hey, I expect this to be this and that to be that. And, with Florida State kind of blowing up everything and being who they currently are, who's going to be the person that replaces Florida State? And the product that we see out of Syracuse right now, it's the deepest we've been. It's probably the most talent we've seen in a long time. And if they can just keep on pace, who knows what the end product could be for them. Each week you just got to get a little bit better in each of the thirds, right? Offense, defense, and special teams. And, to go back to what we were just talking about, if they can polish up special teams, maybe they can break one, or they hold them into better field position, which then allows the defense to come on and get a turnover, and boom, 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 boom. So if you're firing on all 3 cylinders, you're in a pretty good spot. So to get back to your question, do I know what's going on? I think the only thing that matters is the product that Syracuse puts out on the field, because if they continue to improve, they're going to put themselves in a very good situation that, some might have said, hey, they're going to be X, Y, and Z. Others said, hey, maybe they can be 500 plus, but we've seen this in the past, right? Like we've seen them go 6-0 and we get really excited, but this is a different coaching staff. It's a different team and it's a different demeanor right now that I see.
And Franz talked about that too. Like he was talking titles and conference stuff and all that from like day one. And I think that caught a lot of us off guard, right? Like, well, Syracuse has never competed for the ACC title. Why now? Like even in their best year in 2018, you were boxed out by what turned out to be a Clemson national championship team that year. The fact that, it's wide open, but they've actually had this on mind now for 9 or 10 months. Can that help you, not be, I guess, shocked by the position you're in right now?
Well, it usually goes like this, wherever you come from. So, you've seen the coaches come from different places. And, with Dino was coming up from head coach at a high level, but, his head coaching ranks were coming from somewhere else and coming from the MAC up. And, with Fran's first experience being a head coach coming from the SEC down, right? Like that's what Georgia's talking about on a daily basis. And, when you're in there and you're competing and you have a certain level of expectation of how things are going to run and who's going to do what, and then the ability to go out and recruit and tell a guy like, hey, you're not up to snuff, you got to sit the bench, and now you have a quality guy behind him. That is where the difference lies right now. Is yes, we're missing Marlo Wax at a tremendous level, but also too for a guy for Fidel Diggs to come in and have the opportunity to stand up and play linebacker as well as put his hand down and rush the passer. And we didn't have those Jimmies and Joes last year. And now there's more of those guys that can do multiple things. It makes your life a lot easier as a coach, as well as a coordinator.
Yeah, well, when people are out there making plays, it makes the play calls look really good. That's for darn sure. So we got Adam Terry with us. All right, we've been trying to figure this out here, Adam, because Fran seems to like during these weeks he seems to come up with like a beef or something with these other teams. What do you think we got for Stanford this week? He was pleasant, like nothing weird came up at his press conference today, but it just feels like by later this week there's got to be a rallying cry here for Friday night's game.
Yeah, I don't know what that's going to be, but maybe it's a beef between chancellors, and it's an opportunity for Syracuse to say that they're a high-level institution and they're on the heels of Stanford. Who knows? Like, if he pulls that one out and he throws that card down on the table, then in Fran we trust. So, who knows what it's going to be? But I really think it's. This week might be, it's not about them, it's about us. And these are the things that we've improved upon. And if we've improved upon them, if those improvements have occurred, then you're going to be very pleased with what the outcome is. And I think it might be a little bit more of that one because, Stanford football, when's the last time Stanford football was really relevant, right? Probably the Christian McCaffrey era.
Yep.
So, there's a coaching change for a reason. And as much as I was a big fan of David Shaw. He was a position coach, as a wide receiver coach when I was in Baltimore. Troy Taylor coming in, there's a reason that he's coming in. They're trying to flip this program around just like Syracuse is doing. But the one thing that I see in stark contrast is the roster, right? When you're starting to look at some of these transfers coming in for Stanford, it's not the quality of what Fran Brown and his staff has done, and I think that's really the difference right now in this game is just personnel. Yeah,
if you literally to transfer into Stanford is hard to do academically. They legitimately, it's very hard to go out and get people in the portal because they can't get them into school there. So it's a significant issue with where their football team is right now. Another thing Fran was talking about earlier today, somebody asked him about LeQuint, and I think coming into this season, Adam, we're like, all right, LeQuint's based on last year and everything, LeQuint's the leader on offense, and then they'll work it in around it. Now, Kyle McCord's been lights out, unbelievable here the last couple weeks. Do you permanently change that thought here, Adam? Is it still a game-by-game thing? How do you go about the idea of, which foot's leading the offense at this point when you look at what McCord's done passing and still knowing you have LeQuint Allen?
I think you've got a special talent at quarterback, and Kyle McCord, as long, and I continually say this, as long as he's kept clean and the pocket is pretty good around him, him throwing the ball around it's a fun thing to watch. It's almost like watching a high caliber 7-on-7 team where they can distribute the ball, and each guy, it seems as though he's playing free, right? And sometimes this is a hard thing to say, but when you go to a high-level school like Ohio State, sometimes you got to get the ball to those five-star guys, right? And at Syracuse right now, it's more about get it to the guy that's open so we can continue to move down the field and make plays. And you've seen that in how he's distributed the football. Now, there's going to be a time where somebody comes up and they dial it up appropriately, and Syracuse is going to have to run the football. And, with LeQuint Allen and Will Nixon, that's going to be a very good 1-2 combo. And, with LeQuint 2 games in, he's almost at 200 yards. So that's almost a 100-yard average per game. So it's not as though he's slacking. He's just overshadowed by somebody who is playing great football. And as long as Kyle McCord can continue to play great football, LeQuint Allen is always going to be in that range of, can he be a 1,000-yard rusher? When's the game he's going to pop off? And, there's a game that Kyle McCord might not be on his best, and some of the running game is going to have to pick up that slack. So that's the luxury about football is you're going to need – you got to play your 1/11th, and when those guys are high-caliber guys, that product at the end is pretty tremendous.
And yeah, LaQuince probably been used more like a closer this year than the tone setter like he was last year. So definitely a different role, but certainly a lot of touches here. All right, Adam, this won't affect Syracuse in this way this week, but Stanford traveling across country. Then Syracuse has two going the other way with Vegas and then Cal later this season. You've obviously had to deal with cross country games during your career going back to the NFL. What is the challenge like for a player this week when you have the long travel and all that stuff as Stanford has to deal with?
I think for Stanford, it's, time zones flipping, right? And you're gaining a little bit. But, when you're in a situation of, did you get the bigger plane, right? Like this is the one that I always go back to is, did you get the bigger plane or did the athletic department skimp out, right? Like that means the world of a difference for some of these offensive linemen, for some of these wide receivers, these big, tall guys. Do they have enough leg room? Were they well fed on that flight? What is the hydration level? Like once you get on and off the plane, a lot of it is kind of status quo. Like you're accustomed to coming and going to the hotel. But also with that being said is, I know our trips were probably out a day earlier than we're accustomed to. So are you missing your classes? Are you going to get behind? What is the thought process behind that? But, with college football, you're so regimented that this is outside of the flight and making sure that you're hydrated. It's business as usual. You're going to get on there and be prepared. The caveat to that is how far in advance are you getting out there in order to make this a little bit easier on everybody that's traveling because of the distance.
I've heard they got a bigger plane, but these charter companies, Adam, until the plane actually shows up, you never quite know what you're getting on. They will be flying out on Wednesday for the Friday game. And Stanford's academics are weird. They're very good. The class doesn't start till Monday. I don't quite understand that. They don't have class go until Monday. So I guess this is the rare circumstance, right? If you're playing Stanford, that they won't be neck deep in the books on a flight like this.
So, then the competitive advantage goes to Stanford in that regard because all they've been doing is playing football up to this point, right?
Yeah.
Like if you think about it, that's another 3 weeks without class. Yeah, you're probably going into a different schedule. You're not in your doubles or anything like that, but that is a huge competitive advantage when guys don't have to go to class and they can get in the cold tub and make sure that they're taking care of their bodies. Like, it doesn't seem like a lot right now, especially with a bye week so early. But that's one that I never knew, and I appreciate for that information.
There you go.
I will use that on the broadcast this week.
Okay, there we go. We're people helping people here, Adam. It will trickle down around. We'll get it here from the ESPN studio. That is now rotated it around the corner to the TK studio later this week. So we're making things happen here inside the building. And man, as we wrap up here, you look at these AP top 25s come out and you see Syracuse is, man, they're hanging right there. Like, and it's not going to take much, right? Like if you beat Stanford, beat Holy Cross, and just like a couple of back-end top 25 teams lose, suddenly you got a number next to your name. What do you think that could do for the whole thing around here, just to, add another emphasis to what's going on in these early days of Fran Brown?
It brings a lot of positivity, and then you're starting to go on the road, and you're going to need as much support from the community, support from the faculty as you can get, because it is, when you start that 3 weeks of bouncing around and not sleeping in your own bed before a game, once you finish that Holy Cross game, you're out and about until you come back to Virginia Tech. It's different, right? Like now you're on the road and it's us against them. You're in a hostile environment every week, and I think you can build that mentality of like, hey, they're snubbing us now, and what's going to happen when we win these next X amount of games. UNLV is going to be that first major test. I think, like you look at Stanford and how we match up on paper. It's not. There's never an easy win. But I look at it and you come away from it and you're like, okay, we can win this one. Holy Cross, if you don't win that one, we got problems. And then you start in this gauntlet of ACC teams, or after UNLV, then you go into 2 ACC teams. So you're going to get tested, and it's might be one of those rallying cries for Fran. Maybe it's not against the other schools. It could be against the ACC saying, or the national media saying, hey, like we are something. And when we get there, you're going to know it.
Yeah, go figure. I mean, we're getting, cart before the horse and all that, but UNLV and Syracuse randomly could be 2 ranked teams coming up in a few weeks, which I don't think anybody had on their bingo card as recently as a couple weeks ago. But here we are, college football in 2024. All right, man, enjoy the week. Hopefully it all goes well Friday night, and we'll talk again next Monday, okay?
Sounds like a plan.